Stuck in the middle with you. Stuck in the middle with you. And your friends, they all are coming, slap you on the back and say, please, please. Okay. Um, all right. So we're doing chapter 5. Um, we're doing the second part of the conversation. We just finished this piece that was talking about the sacred place. I'm going to jump back in right where we left off. Audible chapter 1, 5 minutes and 26 seconds left to go. 5 minutes and 26 seconds into chapter 1. The heroic deed is the one deed done by many different people. Why are there so many stories about heroes in mythology? In popular novel writing, the main character is a hero. That is to say, someone who has found or achieved or done something beyond the normal range of experience. A hero properly is someone who has given his life to something bigger than himself or other than himself. In all of these cultures, whatever the costume the hero might be wearing, what is the deed? Well, there are two types of deeds. And also, while I was initially writing this, the song Natural Mystic came on. So I need to see how that connects, because I think it fits very easily with Sacred Space conversation. We'll come back to that. I think we're transitioning to another thought. That idea is going to come up in another chapter, though. This can be seen also in a simple initiation ritual where a child has to give up his childhood and become an adult. He has to die, you might say, to his infantile personality and psyche and come back as a self-responsible adult. It's a fundamental experience that everyone has to undergo. We're in our childhood for at least 14 years. Then to get out of that posture of dependency, psychological dependency, into the motif of the hero's journey. Leaving one condition, finding the source of life to bring forth in a richer or more mature or other condition. Here's a question. So that if we happen not to be heroes in the grand sense of redeeming society, we have to take that journey, that personal journey ourselves, spiritually and psychologically, inside us. And here's a aside, and I just noticed this the other day. The word ritual is in the word spiritual. I need to do some work on that because I'm sure that's not an accident. Here's the answer. That's right. Otto Rank, in his important little book, The Myth of the Birth of the Hero, declares that everyone is a hero in birth, where he undergoes a tremendous psychological as well as physical transformation from the condition of a little water creature living in a realm of amniotic fluid into an air-breathing mammal, which ultimately will be standing. That's an enormous transformation. And had it been consciously undertaken, it would have been indeed a heroic act. There was a heroic act on the mother's part as well, who had brought this all about. That's the primary hero form, you might say. Here's the question. Do heroes go out and consciously choose their journeys? Here's the response. There are both kinds of heroes, some that choose to undertake a journey and some that don't. One kind of hero that often appears in Celtic myths is the princely hunter who has followed the lure of a deer into a range of forest that he has never been in before. The animal there undergoes a transformation, becoming the queen of the fairy hills or something of that kind. That is a type of adventure in which the hero has no idea what he's doing, but suddenly finds himself in full career of an adventure in a transformed realm. And then there's another kind in which the hero sets out responsibly and intentionally to perform the deed. For instance, Odysseus' son, Telemachus, was told by Athena, go find your father. That father quest is a major hero adventure for young people. That is the adventure of finding what your career is, what your nature is, what your source is. You undertake that intentionally. And of course, that's the journey we're talking about in this book. Or there's the legend of the Sumerian sky goddess, Inanna, who descended into the underworld and underwent death to bring her beloved back to life. Then there's one into which you are thrown or pitched. For example, being drafted into the army. You didn't intend it, but you're in now. You're in another transformation. You've undergone a death and resurrection. You've put on the uniform, and you're in another culture. So here's the question. Does heroism have a moral objective? Here's the answer. The moral objective is that of saving a people or saving a person or supporting an idea. The hero sacrifices himself for something. That's the morality of it. Now, from another position, of course, you might say that the idea for which he sacrificed himself was something that should not have been respected. That's a judgment from the other side, but it doesn't destroy the intrinsic heroism of the deed performed. That's a different angle on heroes than what I got as a boy, the questioner says, when I read the story of Prometheus going after fire and bringing it back, benefiting humanity and suffering for it. Here's the answer. Yes, Prometheus brings fire to mankind and consequently civilization. The fire theft, by the way, is a universal mythic theme, and that's kind of where I land. Often it's a trickster animal or bird that steals the fire and then passes it along to a relay team of birds or animals who run with it. Sometimes the animals are burnt by the flames as they pass the fire along, which is said to account for the different colorings. The fire theft is a very popular worldwide story. Here's a question. The people in each culture are trying to explain where fire came from. Here's an answer. The story isn't really trying to explain it. It has more to do with the value of fire. The fire theft sets man apart from the animals. When you're in the woods at night, you light a fire and that keeps the animals away. You can see their eyes shining, but they're outside the fire range. Here's a question. So they're not telling the story just to inspire others or to make a moral point? Here's the answer. No, it's to evaluate the fire, its importance to us, and to say something about what has set man apart from the beasts. Many of them give their lives. But then the myth also says that out of the given life comes a new life. It may not be the hero's life, but it's a new life, a new way of being, a new way of becoming. I'm running out of beer. I'm going to have to go downstairs in a second. Question. These stories of the hero vary from culture to culture. Is the hero from the East different from the hero in our culture? Here's the answer. And I love this. It's the degree of illumination or action that makes them different. There is a type of early culture hero who goes around slaying monsters. Now, that is a form of adventure from the period of prehistory when man was shaping his world out of a dangerous, unshaped wilderness. The world has another shape, but it is not shaped for me. In that world, man goes about killing monsters. Here's a question. So the hero evolves over time, like most other concepts and ideas. Here's the answer. He evolves as the culture evolves. I haven't heard this song in so long. He evolves as the culture evolves. Moses is a hero figure, for example. He ascends the mountain, he meets Yahweh on the summit of the mountain, and he comes back with rules for the formation of a whole new society. That's a typical hero act. Departure, fulfillment, return. And on the way, there are adventures that can be paralleled with other traditions. Here's a question. Is Buddha a hero figure? Here's an answer. The Buddha follows a path very much like that of Christ. Only, of course, the Buddha lived 500 years earlier. You can match those two savior figures right down the line, even to the roles and characters of their immediate disciples or apostles. You can parallel, for example, Ananda and Peter, St. Peter. The story of Jesus, for example, there's a universally valid hero deed represented in the story of Jesus. First, he goes to the edge of the consciousness of his time, where he goes to John the Baptist to be baptized. Then he goes past the threshold into the desert for 40 days. In the Jewish tradition, the number 40 is mythologically significant. The children of Israel spent 40 years in the wilderness. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert. In the desert, Jesus underwent 3 temptations. First, there was the economic temptation, where the devil comes to him and says, "You look hungry, young man. Why not change these stones to bread?" And Jesus replies, "Man lives not by bread alone, but by every word out of the mouth of God." And then we have the political temptation. Jesus is taken to the top of a mountain and shown the nations of the world. And the devil says to him, "You can control all these if you bow down to me," which is a lesson not well enough made known today of what it takes to be a successful politician. Jesus refused. Finally, the devil says, "And so now you're so spiritual, let's go up to the top of Herod's temple and let me see you cast yourself down. God will bear you up and you won't even be bruised." That is what is known as spiritual inflation. I'm so spiritual, I'm above the concerns of the flesh of this earth, but Jesus is incarnate, is he not? So he says, "You shall not tempt the Lord your God." Those are the 3 temptations of Christ, which occur in the desert, and they are as relevant today as they were in the year AD 30. Likewise, the Buddha, too, goes into the wilderness and has conferences there with the leading gurus of his day. And he goes past them, and after a season of trials and search, comes to the Bo tree, the tree of illumination, where he likewise undergoes 3 temptations. They are not the same temptations, but they are 3 temptations. The first is of lust, the second of fear, and the third of social duty, doing what you're told, submission to public opinion. In the first temptation, the Lord of Lust displays his 3 beautiful daughters before the Buddha. Their names were desire, fulfillment, and regret. Future, present, and past. But the Buddha, who had already disengaged them from attachment to essential character, was not moved. Then the Lord of Lust turned himself into the Lord of Death and flung at the Buddha all the weapons of an army of monsters. But the Buddha had found in himself that still point within, which is of eternity untouched by time. So again, he was not moved, and the weapons flung at him turned into flowers of worship. Finally, the Lord of Dust and Death transformed himself into the Lord of social duty and argued, "Young man, haven't you read the morning papers? Don't you know what there is to be done today? The Buddha responded by simply touching the earth with the tips of his fingers of his right hand. Then the voice of the goddess mother of the universe was heard like thunder rolling on the horizon. Now, both the Buddha and Christ found salvation beyond death and returned to the wilderness to choose and instruct disciples who helped them establish a new way of consciousness in terms of what they had discovered during their temptations, who then brought their message to the world. These are the same hero deeds. These are the spiritual hero deeds. The messages of the great teachers, Moses, Buddha, Christ, Muhammad, differ greatly, but their visionary journeys are very much the same. At the time of his election, Muhammad was an illiterate camel caravan master. But every day he would leave his home in Mecca and go out to the mountain cave to meditate and meditate and meditate. One day a voice called to him, "Write." And he listened. And we have the Quran. It's an old story. Here's a question. Sometimes it seems to me that we ought to feel pity for the hero instead of admiration. So many of them have sacrificed their own needs for others. Here's the answer. They all have. Here's a question. And very often, what they accomplished is shattered by the inability of the followers to see. Here's an answer. Yes, you come out of the forest with gold, and it turns to ashes. That is a well-known fairy tale myth. In this culture of easy religion, and then it stops. Here we go. I'm skipping a section, but I'll come back to it. In this culture of easy religion, cheaply achieved, it seems to me we've forgotten that all three of the great religions teach us that the trials of the hero's journey are a significant part of life, that there's no reward without renunciation, without paying the price. The Quran says, "Do you think that you shall enter the garden of bliss without such trials as came to those who passed before you?" And Jesus said in the Gospel of Matthew, "Great is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth to life, and few there be who find it." And heroes of the Jewish tradition undergo great tests before they arrive at their redemption. When we come back to video 3, we're going to go back to that section that we just skipped, and then we'll continue. Thank you so much, guys. This is fun.